It was profound for me. When I discovered my astrology, a lot of things about my life started to make sense of why I experience things this way and why I have always felt this thing in my life. The reason why you would go get a reading is to get the confirmation that you're not crazy, that you know who you are at a deep level, and that you are safe to follow that intuition, that self-knowing. Most people are just pushing, and when they discover who they are, they can relax and just begin to flow in life. And that's the whole point. Like, you do have energy to do the things that you love, but in your own way and in your own timing. And when you find that timing, that's when the magic starts to happen. The awareness that we have now about who we are as a humanity, so much has expanded in awareness. We're leaving an old way of thinking and pattern and stepping into a new one as a collective. So the consciousness of humanity as a whole is expanding, which is by default waking people up to themselves.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Spirit Unfolding podcast, where we explore the depth of the human experience, the creative life force energy that runs through us all, and what we can do to have a more beautiful life and create a more beautiful world. I'm so excited today to sit down with Jai Gobind, who is like a walking library of astrology, gene keys, and human design, but she's also sort of like a dancer that weaves them together and dances in between them. And I've had the pleasure of having a reading from her about 1 or 2 months ago. And there were so many profound insights and fun things that came up. I'm so excited to sit down with her today, dive into what these modalities are and these perspectives and looking at life and how they can help us pretty much to figure out who we are, more, and figure out how we can use that to our benefit and not fight against life, but work with life. So Jai, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited for this conversation.
Yeah, me too. I'd love to, before we dive into the personal stuff, I feel like it's probably a good place to start with, for the people that aren't super familiar with gene keys, human design, and astrology. Can you give just a bit of a crash course in a sense of what the three perspectives are and how they're connected?
Yes. So I like to say that astrology is like this playground, more like a neutral space where you can see different ways that you embody different archetypes and different states of awareness. And there's a lot that you can do with astrology. There's, for example, you can look at your natal chart, which describes the basic kind of aspects that you embody, and it's based off of where the planets were when you were born and all of that. And so it's this kind of playground. And interestingly enough, both human design and the gene keys sprung out of astrology, the tropical astrology. And so the astrology is kind of like one of the fundamental aspects of both of the other two. So they're connected. So then human design is what I like to call the more masculine aspect. It's the more strategic. It's very much more like if you do step 1, step 2, and step 3, then things are going to start to change. And there's even something in human design called the human design experiment, where you test and see if it's going to work. For example, with your authority, you start to make decisions based off of your authority once you find out what that is. And then you see, is it working? Is it not working? So it's a little bit of a more practical kind of an experiment. And then the gene keys is what I like to call the more feminine, contemplative part of who you are. All three systems are basically showing you who you are and telling you about all these different archetypes and how you embody them, and which makes you who you are as a whole, but they use 3 different languages. So with the gene keys, you get this very beautiful kind of meditative and contemplative way of interacting with that same information. And then the Gene Keys also offers a way to explore these things a little bit more through the feelings and through actual relationships, and takes it a little more into the healing space, I feel. But they can all bring healing about, but they just have different ways of speaking and describing who you are.
Yeah, awesome. What I feel like the first time I got in touch with Gene Keys, I think through a podcast of Richard Rudd, who's the one that brought it to life, right? Was it so cool that it takes you from your shadow to your gift, to your CD, your essence, or your most, let's say, most positive expansion of that particular key of you, of that part, which is, it's so inspiring because it's like, I feel like a lot of people tend to look at astrology like these are facts about me, and that's kind of what it is. But I feel like what I like about, well, I think Jinkies, but maybe this is something I'd like to dive into now anyway with you. Like how strict are these things? Is it like law? Is it inspiration? Is it something that we can have fun with and experiment with? I suppose so. Like you explained a little bit about that, but how strict is it?
Yeah, this is a really good question. I mean, it's like the big question that we always ask with especially people that would look at things like this and feel like, what's, how accurate is this? Is this scientific and stuff like that? So for me, I have, and it goes to how did it affect me personally is how I would answer that question. It was profound for me when I discovered my astrology and then my human design and my jinkies. Everything made so much sense. A lot of things about my life started to make sense. So why I experience things this way and why I have always felt this thing in my life. And at the same time, you don't want to get like deterministic with it, because then there's an aspect of us here in this third dimension on the earth that is what we call maybe a little bit of like free will, and you can choose, and when you find out about these aspects of you, these different ways that, describe who you are, if you do stay stuck in like, oh, this is who I am and I can't change, then there's no room for any like evolution or improvement. So I wouldn't say that getting stuck is not a good place to be. Like saying like this is it and that's it is not a good place either. I think that the best way to approach it is to be flexible and to give yourself all the space you need to really integrate the information first, and then start to kind of play around with it, like if it was like a fun game, and see like, is that really, who I am? Is it not? And you'll see also that you'll flow, because between the specific energies, because there's another thing like kind of behind, like fundamentally behind all of this, especially with astrology, that it's like a spectrum of or a polarity. Like for example, a lot of the astrology signs oppose each other. Like they each have like a little pair. So for example, like Aries opposes Libra, Taurus opposes Scorpio, and those two signs that are opposing are on basically opposite ends of the spectrum of expression. For example, Aries is independence and Libra is like partnership, right? So alone or together with somebody else. So you can see that, but in between those two polarities, there's a little more here and a little more there. And this kind of takes us into the laws of the universe and that tell us like how the universe works. So it's like a spectrum, and somewhere in it you fit. And then also you can move through it. You can express more of this energy or express more of that energy or this sign or that sign. And eventually, like the human design says, the experiment, you can try it out and see if it fits, like see if it resonates, and then know that you're not stuck. It's not like a law, like you said. It's not like this is who you are and that's it, because you want to leave the space open for any kind of growth and evolution, which is the nature of humanity here, the nature of like who we are here on in this world.
Yeah. Can you tell a bit more about like that experiment, or like the human design experiment? So like, for example, you figured out like a part of your let's say your makeup or like a certain line or something, and then you're like, okay, this is what I'm diving into now. Like how long would you say one needs to continue the experiment before you can draw a conclusion? Is it like, obviously you might, experience certain things pretty soon, but like, is there like more of a, rules or guidance to this?
Well, there is actually they call it the 7 year experiment. So technically, it's supposed to take you 7 years, and 7 years is a very important number. There's a lot of, I guess, literature out there, especially in the world of psychology, about, for example, like when we're little, like the first 7 years are like foundational. And then I've learned through other systems and modalities, and especially the Eastern tradition, like you have the 7 chakras, but then they're also related to cycles of 7 years. So technically, once you discover human design, the next 7 years are like, okay, this is the time to learn about it, to understand it first, and then to see how does it apply to me, and then how much am I actually living in this design, and how much am I living in my not self, which is what they call it in human design. You're living out of alignment. And usually we're very out of alignment because throughout life we get conditioned by our parents, by society, by, all the things that we learn along the way that tell us basically that go against who we are innately or uniquely. Because everybody has a very unique design, like a very unique, like there's like 5 different types in human design, but within those 5 types, there's many variations and combinations of like different personalities, you could say. And so the experiment is more about just see what happens when you use some of the strategies, just see what happens when you listen to, for example, if you have emotional authority, if you listen to your feelings and then you let your feelings kind of guide you to making decisions. So it's about trial and error, like see what happens. So that's kind of what it is. But technically it's like the 7 years would be the mark. But I feel like nowadays if you really dive in, you can take like quantum leaps in that process of like embodying it. And it's really up to you. It's up to you, because sometimes it is a little scary, because you find out quite often when I do readings, people find out they're living really out of alignment from what their design says, how their design says they should be making decisions, what their strategy is. And so it's a big jump for some
It
people.
asks them then, in that sense, to really shift their lives in a big way.
Right.
If
Yeah.
they want to follow it, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And that's a lot. Yeah. For some people.
Yeah.
So it just depends on where you're at, You can go full on, or you can just kind of take your time with it.
Yeah. I feel like it's a good thing, because I like to pick something and then just dive into that. Because
I do too.
When I had the reading with you, I chose to do like the full, all 3 of them, and it was amazing. And I felt like I need a year or more, maybe 7 years to unpack this, right? Like there's so many details and perspectives and things that you can look at. When did your journey into astrology, human design, gene keys begin?
When I used to, I was living in Boulder, Colorado, and I was living there for about 12 years. And that time of my life that was kind of like my spiritual awakening. It was when I was first introduced to Eastern philosophies through just literally going to a yoga class. And at first it was like very simple, like the breath, the importance of the breath. And it took me into this world that I didn't even know existed. Eventually, towards the end of those 12 years is when I had already gone through a lot of deep emotional kind of upheaval, like the dark night of the soul in my own personal life, discovering like who I wanted to be versus who I was. And then came the systems. So like then came astrology, and I was so curious about it. And I have a lot of Gemini in my chart. Like I have Sun in Gemini, Venus in Gemini. I'm a Gemini rising. My North Node is in Gemini. Chiron is in Gemini in my chart, and they're all in my 12th house, which is the house of spirituality. So I've always been someone who has been drawn to, say, like the spiritual world. And these 12 years in Boulder allowed me to kind of like open myself up to explore different like modalities, spirituality. I even went to massage school and learned a whole other side of things about healing, right? Healing was the main topic for me for those 12 years. So when I finally got to astrology, it gave me another, it was like another way to understand, to try to heal. And it resonated with me a lot. So I started with astrology and then discovered the gene keys and then human design. It was in that order that I found them. But it was during that time where I was coming out of the crazy dark night and actually finally stepping into my design.
Wow. And what's your favorite, or what is the one that has brought you most?
That's a tough one because I feel like they all have their own unique way of speaking, that all three of them at times can pull me in. You know, like sometimes the gene keys just, whoa, blows my mind. And then sometimes in the human design, just, oh, that makes sense. Oh, that makes sense, you know? And then with the astrology, I feel like I can find out such cool information about going back in time and forward in time and like seeing, you know, where are you at right now? And like, I don't know. I don't think I could choose one. They're all
Yeah,
like,
that's
they're all
cool.
like one to me. It's crazy.
Yeah, it feels like that when you're moving through them. It's cool, right? You can I didn't even look at that, but you can use astrology to time travel in a sense. You can, in a way,
Yeah.
go back to certain moments in your life. I remember that you picked up, I don't know exactly the year, but you picked up like the moment that I think my either my sun or my moon shifted signs. You were like, that's probably a moment where there would be a big transformation. And there's other moments you can sort of cycle through your life up to now and be like, okay, this is likely where this or that happened. And
Mm-hmm.
then most of the time something will resonate.
Yeah, yeah. We were looking at your progressions, and then the
Yeah.
progressions, it's the concept of the evolution of the soul. So as you start to live your life from the moment that you're born, the planets also start kind of evolving, just like you start evolving. So it's that concept, and you can go back in time and look at where, you know, when these big shifts happen, and quite often, I mean, honestly, pretty much all the time, something important has occurred in that person's life that is palpable, that you can actually see and kind of have like the proof of it. You know, it's interesting that you say that, travel through time, because what I have done, I actually also, since we had your session, I started to write a book. And the
Oh, wow.
book is all about, it's about my life. And I've been wanting to write a book about my life and my story and my transformation, how I kind of came into all this and stepped into the world of like healing. And for the longest time, I didn't, in my mind, it was kind of like in the air. You know, the idea was floating around and I couldn't quite figure out exactly how I was going to write the book, because it's such a huge topic to write about your life. How do you organize it? How do you structure it? And then all of a sudden, one day it hit me. And I realized that I needed to follow my life through the lens of the astrology. And so there's these major cycles and life cycles that happen throughout astrology. For example, one of them most people are familiar with is called the Saturn return. And it
Yeah.
happens whenever we're 29, 30 years old, and it's like the coming of age through the world of astrology. It's a kind of a year where we're faced with, you know, difficult things that we need to, you know, push through, step through. We need to grow up and mature, basically. That's just one example, but there are other, you know, in the progressions, you know, what happens within the first 7 years and then the second 7 years. So I've started to do that, and I've noticed that this could be a very powerful tool for people to reflect on their lives and like realign themselves too.
Amazing. I'm excited.
Yeah.
It will probably be a while, or
Yeah,
do you
it's
have
gonna be a
a?
minute. But I've been, yeah, it's been really like it just turned on, you know, and it's like really alive right now in terms of like the project, the creativity. So I've definitely been diving into it pretty deeply, and I've been having a blast because I'm also noticing and learning things about myself and my life that I didn't realize before, and that's the power of astrology.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, it one of the things that came up for me is it feels like it helps you to remember. It helps you to remember yourself, and then, like I said in the intro, like to align further with it, right? And you said like earlier that so many people, as soon as they get into touch with this, they realize that they're so out of alignment.
Yeah.
What is the general? I'm curious. Like, what is the general sort of reaction of people when they figure this out? Because I suppose like it can go all directions, but probably they're generally like, are people inspired? Are people scared? And what do we then do?
Yeah, right. I think most people are relieved because they know who they are. That's the thing. It's like the reason why you would go get a reading is to get the confirmation that you need, that you're not crazy, that you know who you are at a deep level, and that you are safe to follow that intuition, that self-knowing. Because most people are like, I knew it, I knew that. And it was like, I don't know how, but I was like, I knew it. And I've been like, my whole life, I'm just going against, just trying. That's what happens. Most people are just pushing, against. And when they discover who they are, they can relax and just begin to flow in life. And that's the whole point. It's like, we're supposed to be yes, having challenges and difficulties and going through them, but not like completely out of alignment, where we feel like we're literally going upstream, fighting the
Y-
current.
Your entire life, perhaps,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
yeah, 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 exactly.
So yeah, there's could be a little bit of shock. Sometimes there's a little bit of shock. Sometimes there's the, oh my God, that's really exciting because I thought blah 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 blah, And then
Mm,
sometimes it's the other way around, like, oh wow. Like for example, for me, we live in a world where, and one of the things in human design for anybody that's new is the types. And one of the types are, generators, and another one is manifesting generators. And they make up 70% of the population. And they are the types that have the energy to basically channel the life force of the planet. And when they are basically doing what they love, then they feel like constant energy flowing through them, wake up every morning with it, go to sleep, exhausted, but a good kind of tired. And then they wake up the next morning and they're like ready to go at it again. So we live in a generator world. I'm a
right. Yeah.
projector. I'm a projector, right? So I don't have that center, which is called the sacral defined, to give me that consistent energy. So what happened when I discovered it, I was like, oh my God, my entire life I've been pushing and trying to do, and go, 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 like society tells us, but that doesn't work for me because I have to rest more than I do. Right. And so and maybe you could give us your example of when you
Yeah.
discover, because you are a manifester,
Manifestor.
which
Yeah.
also is the type that doesn't have that center defined.
Yeah. And it was so funny because you said like, okay, so you're a manifester, you explained a couple of more things, and you're like, you need way more rest than most people. And I couldn't stop laughing because it's like, I am definitely not taking as much rest as most people, let alone more. So it's like, it's a good, I feel like it was the final thing that I needed to give myself permission to
Yes,
let go and relax more and not see it as like wasted productivity potential, but as
right.
something that I actually need to be able to be productive or creative when it matters.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. That's alignment. Like you
So
do have energy to do the things that you love, but in your own way and in your own timing. And when you find that timing, that's when the magic starts to happen. That's what we call like living life in alignment. And then like life basically starts bringing you the right opportunities, the right people, the right situations, just all starts to feel like, wow, I didn't think it could be this easy.
yeah. And one other thing that comes up is like, and I believe this was when we are going through the human design, and you, there was like you clicked on something that was like way more details coming up about certain channels, and it was the channel of the brainwave, which said,
Yes.
just because you can see the truth more quickly than others doesn't mean that you're here to share it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And that's definitely, I mean, especially in the whole COVID era, but also just around other times, I've really felt like, oh yeah, that's gonna just backfire on me. Like it's that's not the right type of energy that serves me or anyone else to tell people what they need to do or what I see. It's way more about like embodying it and just following my own heart, my own intuition. And I feel like it's probably one of the best things that we can all do. If we want to see the world differently, start by embodying it ourselves first, right? That's
Yeah.
already a challenge enough before we start telling other people what to do.
Oh, totally. Yeah. It's a lot easier. It's a lot easier to look at other people and judge other people and have opinions and things about other people than it is to really truly turn that focus on yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like it's also for a lot of people that are in this, let's say, activist the channel, the activist archetype in a sense, at some point in their lives, it probably comes from some core wounding, right? So if you like, I feel like when I recognized, like, when I was more in that energy, is like, okay, I want other people to change, but where is that coming from, right? And maybe actually, if I dive into my astrology or dive into something else, I can see like, oh, my one of my big wounds is around this theme. Let's discover more about that. Let's work on that, and then actually, this, let's say, need to change the outside world maybe dissipates a little bit.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree that a lot of it is about finding the awareness of where things originate from, also. And then once you discover kind of like the root cause of something, you understand the behavior that's happening now as an adult and where it comes from. And then you can finally change it or heal it or whatever needs to happen. Sometimes all we need is just to find awareness and see something clearly, and then it changes automatically. Like you don't even really have to do anything. Sometimes, these, sort of habits and, ways that we do things now that we don't even really think about come from, and a lot of them could be like coping behaviors because, whatever trauma we had when we were little. But when we actually go back and revisit those traumas in a safe space, with, guidance that is, that's to help you move through it, then you can change. It's like you go back in time, change that by bringing awareness into it. And whatever it is you need to do, like you need to love it. Do you need to just see it? Do you need to, change it? Like shamanic journey, soul retrieval kind of thing, change it. And
Yeah.
then you can change it in the future. Like you can create new timelines for yourself when you actually get to the bottom of where certain negative behaviors or habits are coming from. And a lot of these three systems can help you, not always, because I don't want to claim anything like, oh yeah, and anybody that does this is going to get all the answers. No, but they can help sometimes to show you the way towards the deeper layers where the true healing actually happens. So they can open the doors, but then you got to kind of go in and go deeper and do that work. And it's individual. Like nobody can do it for you,
Yeah, exactly. Of course. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it feels also like it's, well, maybe it coincides a little bit with what you said about the relief that a lot of people feel, where it's, you go away a little bit from this sense of having to work and having to do more, become more, and it's more about relaxing into what you are and accepting what you are and learning to work with that. And it also feels to me like it's such a powerful thing to know the designs and some of the key, like, let's say, astrological attributes about the people that you spend the most time with, like your parents, your spouse, your best friends. If you know a little bit, for example, with me, like one of the things that you said, like, oh, you have a lot. So I'm a Virgo, and you have a lot of planets in Virgo, right? Yeah. So that amplifies that energy, and you know very well what you want, and it's really hard for you to sort of deviate from that. And it's like I experienced that, but like for my girlfriend to be able to see that in my chart was like, okay, so that's real. He's not just he's not just pretending, that he doesn't want to find a middle ground or whatever. And obviously there's many ways where I do, but like it's interesting. Just an example of like understanding your partner better, for example, or understanding why your parents are a certain way can give a lot more space and relaxation in the relationship and communication.
Oh my God. Yes. Yes. Like 100%. Just thinking about that, I'm like, oh my God. Yes. So I think also at the same time, like sometimes it's, you just need to see it to help you understand how to actually communicate successfully with others. Because there's a lot of times in especially intimate relationships, there's a lot of communication issues, and through the lens of, for example, just human design, that if you have two different types, living together, their auric fields are doing different things, right? So like, and it will affect each person differently, and there are some things that you can't see because they seem so natural to you. And then you think, well, everybody else is like this. You know what I mean? And then you realize, oh, no, human design shows you no, other people are not like this. So yes, when you find out how they are versus how I am, those differences don't get ignored anymore. They actually can. And the whole point is to allow everyone to really fully thrive in their who they are. You have the power of manifesting, right? You're a manifester. And so, someone else would have a different gift or a different power. And yes, and it'll change the way that you see the people in your life. My when I found out that I was a projector, and then I was like, okay, I want to know what is everybody else in the family? Like, what's mom? What's dad? What's my sister? What's my brother? Because we grow up, that's a big one, right? Family, we're always around them, and they condition us, And so when I discovered that I was the only projector, and I was raised by two manifesting generators, and my sister was a manifesting generator and my brother was a generator, so I was the only projector. So it made sense that I had the most trouble, because I was like absorbing, like and magnifying. I have so many undefined centers, which we can get into details if you want to, but basically it just means I'm a very sensitive person, and I was absorbing and like magnifying the energy around me. And it was all this sacral like activity and movement, and it was overwhelming for me. And so I always thought there was something wrong with me. But then discovering who everybody else's design was completely, I was like, oh, wow, that makes so much sense. And then I just relaxed because I didn't have to try to prove myself or, yeah.
Yeah, we tend to feel like we have to, we tend to measure ourselves by the people we're surrounded with the most, right?
Yes.
So like, yeah. And then if you wouldn't know this, you would always think there's something wrong, or you would try to adapt yourself to something that's not natural for you, that's not aligned. Let's go deeper into like the different types of human design and what generally their attributes are. I think that would be really helpful for people.
Yes. And it's nice because there's 5 types. So it's not like there's a million different things. Like with astrology, there's 12 different signs, and like 12 signs, how do I learn all of this?
64 gene keys.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So human design, there's 5 types. Okay. So you have like the energy types, which is the generators and the manifesting generators. And if you are one of those, that means that your strategy is to respond in life, meaning you have to let life come to you, because it's kind of like your auric field it already knows, and it knows how to respond, and it knows what to respond to. Look, what is for me? What is actually for me? What do I need to say yes to? And what do I need to say no to? So those two types are the types that are the builders. They are 70% of the population. So they are constantly moving, doing, building, creating, and it's constant. They have a constant access to energy. So if you're a generator or manifesting generator, you are meant to live life in alignment by doing what you love, what lights you up. Because when you do what you love, that consistent energy will flow through you, and then you'll feel really good. You feel satisfied. You feel happy. You feel joyful, content, in life. And that's like the highest like vibrational frequency for those types.
Yeah.
Then you have projectors, and projectors are projectors, the other three types: projectors, manifestors, and reflectors. They don't have a defined sacral center. So they're not going to have a consistent access to energy. So if you are one of those types, you have to pay attention, because the energy around you, the people around you, it can really affect you and your ability to either how you feel, whether you feel like you have energy or not. It can get overwhelming if you're around too many people, that kind of thing. So they're more sensitive types. And not to say that manifestors and manifesting generators and generators can't be sensitive, but the projectors, the manifestors, or I guess projectors and reflectors would be the most sensitive, and then manifestors have this they're different, because the manifestor aura is closed and repelling, and it's focused, right? So you are essentially you are the type that you see what you want to do, and really all you have to do is just inform and let people know what you're going to do, and then just go do it. Now, the projectors are the ones, their aura is penetrating and absorbing. So they really are here to work kind of one-on-one with people and tune into specifically that person. And they receive so much information just by these one-on-one interactions. And if they are invited, because the strategy of the projector is to wait for the invitation, if they're invited to share what they see, they can be profound guides to people.
So they're going to be brilliant, like coaches, doctors,
yes.
healers,
exactly.
therapists. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But it's specifically, the best scenario would be one-on-one connecting with people, and then that's when the magic happens for the projectors. And not all projectors are made for all people. It's like it has to vibrationally match the end. You have to be invited, and you'll know because the invitation will come from someone. Like, can you tell me what you see? What do you think? And then, or please, tell me, and then you feel that opening, and then you can share what you see as a projector. And then that's when the magic happens. And then the reflectors they're only 1% of the population. So they're the smallest percentage, and they don't have any defined centers in their chart. So everything is undefined for the reflector. And they are more like, they represent the energy of groups. So if you want to know how a community is doing, go find the reflector, because the reflector is going to be literally reflecting everything around them. For reflectors, the environment is everything, literally everything. So if they're in the right environment, then you will see, they will know. If they're around the right people and the right places, they're going to be thriving. But if they're not going to be okay. So they are here to reflect what is happening around us. They help guide us by showing us literally how are we doing? Go find the reflectors,
Wow.
I know, it's very interesting.
For them, even more important than for all of us to surround themselves with the right group. Then.
Exactly.
Yeah. Was also funny was as you shared that going through more details of me being a manifester, you said you have a closed aura, and a memory came up where I was having lunch with my girlfriend and a friend a year ago or so, and the waiter came to us, and we just gave us our order for lunch, and then they both looked at me why are you so closed off? And I didn't realize. I was I'm telling them what I want. I look them in the eyes, but they're yeah, but your aura is closed, your energy is closed. And then my friend told me but that's because you're a manifester, and they always have closed aura, and you can like, if you put your intention behind it, you can give a way more open energy, but like generally you're closed off. You told me why that is. Can we go into that as an example?
Yeah. So the closed and repelling aura is, so the manifester itself is a type that is here that kind of has the power to do what they want, basically. Like if you're following your authority to make decisions, the authority is always like your way of making decisions. So if you follow your authority, what's going to happen is you will the doors will open for you, because the I always like to think of the manifester as like a bowling ball. I think this is what you're getting at, like a bowling ball that is like, once it knows what it wants and then it informs, which is the strategy of the manifester, and there's no resistance, that bowling ball is going to go straight to its target and push all the pins out of the way. Like things just get out of the way because they're meant to manifest. And so in the history, to give it a little bit of perspective, in history, the manifestors were the types that they really thrived in the times of the kings and the queens, because manifestors are really meant to be like directors, that they can have a vision and they can see, like they can oversee their like kingdom, and so in that way they are essentially directing the types that are the ones here to be the builders of a vision. So in the modern world, you can think of, okay, well, we don't have kings and queens. Well, we still have kings and queens, but it's a little bit less like it was back then. People now have a little bit more freedom to kind of do what they want, instead of just be like the peasantry of, the kingdom. But anyway, so in modern times, you would the best alignment for a manifester is like, if you have a vision or an idea. For example, say there's a manifester and they really want to own like a yoga studio or something, or even like a coffee shop or something, right? But there's like a vision for the coffee shop or the project. And then they have to find the generators that also want that vision. And those generators are the builders of the vision, but the manifestors are like the director of the show. So they can guide in that way, and they're really good in that way. And also working alone too. But if you find the right team of generators to help build your vision, and I mean in alignment, right? Like people that like are all in, that they feel like, yes, I want to do, I would love to be in it with you, with this project or whatever it is, then it will tend to be very, very successful. So is that what you were getting at?
Yeah. It was exactly like this. That there's because when she first told me like you have a repelling aura, I was like, oh, is that a bad thing?
I
Like,
know,
I mean,
right? Then you can't think of it as
and
like, ooh.
it could be, I suppose, but if you're aware of it, then it's also like, okay, so inform more, and then you actually help people more understand more, and getting out of the way might be a bad thing. Just like a better way to look at it, but yeah, that's cool. That's exactly what I meant. Like, how would you would you say, like, when we have these three perspectives of astrology, gene keys, human design, what would you say would be a good place to start generally, or is it more like whatever resonates, just go there and see what happens?
Yeah, this is a good question. I think it's going to naturally unfold. Like, I think it's what resonates with you. Because some people, because the three different systems have different languages to describe the same thing, some days the language of the gene keys is what you need. And then sometimes when you haven't even heard of any of it, and you land upon one, something usually happens where like you discover it, and then you get curious about it. That's it calling you. That's what that means when it's like, when it comes to you. It just like someone mentions it in a conversation, or all of a sudden the book comes up in your freaking feed or whatever,
Yeah.
so or something happens and it's like coming to you for some reason. And I would go with the one that resonates the most, because then it's like you don't want people to feel like they're going against anything. You want it to always feel like either a gentle, like a river, or something that feels like we're going in the right direction. It feels right to do this right now. So that's why if you resonate with it, whichever one, just start there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. What I it's interesting how they can like together do some stuff as well, because I felt like I looked into Jinkies a while ago. I think that's actually the first thing of the three for me that I looked into, like maybe 2-3 years ago. Still haven't gone like super in depth, to be honest, but I did like the basic sort of walk through it. And like for me, what was really interesting is like, okay, so my life's work is going from conflict to diplomacy to peace. So my shadow is conflict, and I think the shadow is control actually. So it's like, let me have a look. I'm
Yeah, it's
sorry.
control.
Yeah, it's control. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
No, you're right. You're right. Life's work. Yeah, no, you're correct. It's from conflict to diplomacy to peace. It's the sixth gene key for those of you that
yes,
want to look, you know.
yeah. And then
Yes.
in relationships, the shadow is control.
That's the
And
core wound. Yeah, that's your core wound. The control to authority to valor, the 21st gene key.
yeah, and that's something where I have realized in some painful moments
Oh, yeah.
that I have that shadow. Right? I mean, it's not fun.
No.
We recently renovated our home, and as I'm the manifester, I was, let's say, in charge of. And I put myself in charge in a way of overseeing what needed to happen, and then we had a lot of amazing friends help, and my parents, and when I was stressed, I turned into a little bit of a dictator, and someone was like, "You do this and don't." And I caught myself in it, and other people mentioned, pointed it out, and I was like, I felt so, just feeling so stupid. But then knowing that this is my shadow, this is my life's work, this is so deep, it helps a little bit to take the weight off, because like, okay, this is in a sense ingrained, and this is what I'm here to shift and to transform throughout my life. Not to say like that it's okay that it's there, but it's like it takes a bit of the weight off, and it also shows me what I like about the Jinkies is it shows you a little bit, okay, this is the direction that you can go to transform it.
Yes. And that was what I was talking about in the beginning, about it being a spectrum and not something that's like set. Yes, it's set that this is the gene key that lives in your core wound, or the one that lives in your life's work, if we're talking about either one. But it is a frequency that can be expressed in three different ways. It can be a very low and dense vibration, which the wave just moves really slow and takes its time. And it doesn't necessarily, it's not that it's good or bad, it's just a lower dense frequency. Then the higher frequency would be the gift. And so it vibrates faster. And then the acidic frequency is like the highest of the frequency. So we tend to think about, like, when it's low, we think bad. And when it's high, we think good. But the truth is that it's just, they're all the same thing. Just one is being expressed like this. And then one of them is in this way is being expressed like this. So, but when you are in the shadow, what tends to happen is that the experience of like interacting with people, especially in relationships, when you're in your shadow, and especially in the Venus sequence, which is the sequence that teaches us about our karmic wounding, our karmic patterns that are healed only in relationship. Like, you can't heal it just by yourself, like sitting in a cave. It only gets triggered in relationships. So it can only really be like understood, processed, all of that in relationship. So we're talking about this Venus sequence, but it can really only come about when you're in the space of relationship. But when you're in the shadow, it doesn't feel good, because there's a lot of friction, there's a lot of tension, there's a lot of like, it's density. And so when you become aware of that, and then you start to experience more of the gift side of it, then you're like, this feels better. Like, I like this better. I want to be here more. You know what I mean? So that's why we
Definitely.
attach like, oh, this is good and this is bad, but it's not. It's like some people choose to be in the shadow their whole life, and that's fine. Like, there's no judgment. That's the thing. It's like you're not a good or a bad person because you choose to live this way or that way. It's just the way it is. And if you are someone who wants to change something about you for whatever reason that is, these systems can really help you understand a lot of how to do that.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I mean, and everything starts with just being aware, right? Just be with awareness, and just to see it, something that you've experienced sometimes or maybe a lot in your life, reflected in such a clear way, is already like, okay, now my attention is firmly put on it, because I know that there's a lot of transformation possible here. And like what you said, for example, this sense of control, it doesn't feel good in relationships for the others, for the person you're in relationship with, but it also doesn't feel good to yourself. Like, it
Right.
feels like what you said, like dense, like maybe almost like you want it to be different, but you're kind of stuck, or it's like you feel a little bit more
Feels
like,
like restricting, like
yeah,
a constriction instead of like an expansion.
yeah. And I feel like one of the things that I see as one of the important values in my life is like freedom, in the sense of being able to express myself in the ways that I want, and being able to move about. And what I would love for all of humanity to experience more. And I feel like these are such powerful tools to be able to move further to that direction, right? Like, just to go away from being out of alignment to being in alignment, so you can be more empowered and express more of who you truly are.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, it's like awareness can be the key. Sometimes all it needs is to be seen. And then if you think about like ourselves personally, really all we really want is to be seen and heard.
Mm-hmm.
Even as little kids, like we just like, look at me, I'm cool, I'm special, I want to be special. And that's just natural. But then life happens and we're not seen and we're not heard for years and years and years. So then this is how you can see yourself. Because like then we realize no one can really give you what you need. You got to give it to yourself. So you need to see and recognize yourself. And when you do that, and that's that practice of becoming aware of all these things, you're seeing and recognizing yourself. And when you are able to do that, then the relationships will change around you.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I have a feeling that, well, maybe you're actually way more in tune to this, that more and more people are becoming aware of, let's say, if we want to call them tools or whatever, we call like these three modalities or perspectives. Like, do you, what is your perspective on why are more and more people tuning into this, and how would it help humanity as a whole in the coming time?
Yeah, I think that the reason why more and more people are coming into the awareness of this is because it's time for us to see ourselves. Humanity's becoming aware of itself in a way that they never have before. So remember that example I gave of like, oh, the kings and queens and then like the peasants or the servants or whatever. Like the awareness that we have now about who we are as a humanity, just the fact that we know that now we know we live on a planet and it's a circle, not a square, blah, 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 all that stuff. Like so much has expanded in awareness of
Mm-hmm.
why we're here. The question always lingers of like, but why? Like who are we as a whole? Like what, like, okay, there's a planet and we're on a planet. It's like, floating around in this space, so like the big
Whatever that
question,
is.
right? The big questions are still unanswered. But
Yeah.
we have come to such a level of like, okay, yeah, now everyone, most people accept, oh yeah, we're on a planet, we're all alive on this planet. This planet is traveling through, hurling at high speeds through space. We're like traveling around a star, and that star travels too, and so like we know more, but we don't know the meaning behind it. And I think that the push to expanding the knowing is naturally pushing us to want to know, okay, what's behind it now? And it's, you could call it evolution. A lot of people talk about, the astrological ages and how we're in the age of Aquarius now. There's talk in human design that we're going to be changing in 2027 from the cross of planning to the cross of the sleeping phoenix. And that is their version of we're changing ages, we're changing like themes. So
Right.
we're in between space where we're leaving an old way of thinking and pattern and stepping into a new one as a collective. So the consciousness of humanity as a whole is expanding, which is by default waking people up to themselves. Like, then who am I? And then you start looking at yourself like, what about my family? And then this and then that. And then I just think it's happening naturally. But I also think it's time. Like, it's time for us to go through this phase now as a humanity on the planet. Now you can take that and be like, well, where does that come from? So the background behind that thought of like we're evolving comes from a lot of channelers and people like, for example, have you heard of Dolores Cannon?
Yeah.
So they talk about that there's some kind of an ascension that happens on planets, and it's like this for all planets that have life. But this one is special. Like, there's something special about this planet. And so we are in that process. And then somewhere along the way, everybody has to almost like wake up. Like if we were living in a dream, we've been living in a dream and we wake up from the dream. And I think that's why this is happening. We're all waking up from the slumber. A really good example is the movie The Matrix.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Course.
Like, that's the perfect example for this. It's like there's a lot of talk, and not just one person talking about it, many people throughout like long periods of time that have channeled this message. Like, we're here for a purpose, and the purpose is this awakening and this sort of ascension of a planet. And we're somewhere in that process. And the process right now specifically is causing individuals to wake up, because we're like the cells. We're like the cells of the earth.
I love that.
And
And we are so intrinsically connected to the earth and part of the earth. Our bodies are built of the earth.
So maybe she's awakening, and so we're individually awakening, and it's going to require everybody to wake up. But maybe not. I don't know. We can have that discussion. But I think that's where it comes from.
Yeah, and it also because I know, like, you have, I think this is called a great year. It's like 21,480 years or something like that, where it's like we move through all of the I think that's all of the signs as well, right? Or
yeah, I think the great year is like 25,000 or so, and that each phase is 2,160 years in each like specific sign. So we're in the age of Pisces, and now we're in the age of Aquarius. We just started.
Its own energy, and because of that, there's certain things that will happen on Earth and through humanity that will be more alive in a sense.
Yes, and there's something even cooler about it, because being in the age of Aquarius, it's exactly opposing the age of Leo. Then I just did a podcast with Matias de Stefano, and I asked him to explain this, because I've been following him for a long time. But basically, we are in the age of Aquarius now, and there's a mirror to the age of Leo, which was the age of when Atlantis was the fall and all of that.
Yeah.
So we are feeling the repeating currents of that 12,000 years ago. And so now it's our chance to do it differently. And that's another side of the story, where like we were there in Atlantis, and now we're here 12,000.
Do
We
you
had to wait 12,000 years for the opportunity to try it again.
right? Because now we're opposed to as it was at the time. Do you believe that? Because I know you did a podcast with Robert Grant as well, and like I think some of his work is like around that everything is cycles as well, and he thinks of time as a very interesting thing, like a Mobius strip that you can go backward and forwards
Yeah.
in time in the same way. I'm curious, like what your view is on that. Like, is time cyclical, or because I feel like in a way we can by using these tools we can move through time, like we talked about before.
Right.
So like, and I experience more and more in my life as well. Like time doesn't seem to be linear anymore, or not
Right.
exclusively.
Right.
There's different ways of looking at it. Like,
Yeah.
what's your experience with that?
Great question. So I think time here on Earth, like we invented the linear feeling of time, but time is not linear at all. And that's Robert Grant's point, is that
Yeah.
time is, like you said, a Mobius strip. It's like you can be anywhere and you are everywhere and anywhere all that at the same time. So that life that we were talking about, that we are like 12,000 years ago, is actually happening now at the same time, because time doesn't exist, right? So like that's the bigger concept. And then the cool thing is that what Robert Grant has been talking about a lot lately is the whole procession and precession of the equinoxes, and how in procession, which is like our perspective from Earth, procession is like the tropical astrology, where we feel it like, oh, we're going this way, we're going forward in time towards some kind of a future that we see that's over there, and so it's like we're going forward in time. That's the illusion, right? But then precession, which is the ages, the astrological ages, which has more to do with like the sidereal astrology, that's going back. It's going backwards.
Like Benjamin buttoning away, right?
Because you don't go from the age of Aries to the age of Taurus. Like Aries is one, first sign, Taurus is two. You go from the age of Taurus to the age of Aries, and
Huh.
then the age of Aries to the age of Pisces, and then the age of Pisces to the age of Aquarius. So it's going backwards around the wheel. So that's why procession feels like it's going forward. Precession is going backwards. What he was saying is that when we step into our north node, which in astrology, the north node represents life path, destiny, our future, what we need to be moving towards. It's like that North Star. And that's where
Yeah.
we have the sensation of we have to go to it forward. He's like, once you activate that, you step into your precessional chart, which is the sidereal chart, which it's back, because it's kind of hard to explain these, but basically at some point the tropical chart started to speed up because they fixed the synodial vernal point at 0 degrees of Aries. So the tropical chart just stayed steady, and essentially it slowly started. At one point they were together, but then they slowly started, like the tropical started going kind of forward a little bit ahead. So they're about 24 degrees apart. But the
Okay.
sidereal chart is the 24 degree before. So the sidereal chart is kind of in the past. It seems
Yeah.
like, because for example, if I look at my tropical chart, I am a Gemini. But in my sidereal chart, if you go 24 degrees before when I was born, the sun is in Taurus, which is the sign before Gemini. So it's like tropical, I'm Gemini, sidereal, I'm Taurus, which is behind me, not in front of me in terms of the zodiac wheel.
Yeah.
So this just wait, and so then he says that then because you became aware of the sidereal and the chart that's like going the precession of the equinoxes, you bring that precession into the future, and so it becomes this like infinity loop where you're essentially living
Yeah.
both at the same time.
Yeah. I think there was also one, as a little sidetrack, there was one thing that he mentioned, Robert Grant, in where he I think this was in like some, let's say, like a download of information, like creativity, or it was maybe like in one of these quantum healing hypnosis therapy sessions from like the Dolores Cannon technique, where he asked like, when were the pyramids built? And the answer was 12,000 years into your future, which is also your past. And I think that for him clicked the whole thing of like, that time is different than like it could be cyclical. And it's fascinating.
Yeah,
And
it's
it's like,
totally cyclical. Yeah,
yeah.
for
Yeah,
sure.
we're on this like wheel, like this sky wheel or whatever you want to call it, where it's like, which is moving super slow and fast at the same time in a sense. And yeah.
And it's quantum because, like I said, you can. So I've had experiences with people, and now, so I run a program called the Moon Goddess Training. And right now in level 2, we're going over the Venus sequence. So we do one sequence, there's 3 levels, right? So level 2 is Venus sequence. And my friend who's working with me, Ashley Taylor, and I are doing sessions with the ladies in the program where it's like a shamanic journey and a soul retrieval to go back into childhood and basically collect the lost pieces that were left in the past. And what I mean by that is that when you had a trauma, when you were young and you had some kind of trauma, the fear, the whatever, something stayed stuck in time.
Yeah.
Right. And so we go back in time through a visualization, right? Through a memory. We go into a memory. We remember a memory and we make that memory come alive in our mind's eye. And in that memory, we fix what happened in the past. And we fix it because in that space of dream space in the subconscious mind, there's no limits. You can do anything. You know, so if like your mom wasn't there, then okay, you bring your mom there. You know, like, let's bring her in then. Let's fix it, you know? So we fix it. And then we merge that piece back into ourselves. And then we come back here. And it's like, that's how I was saying earlier, you can change timelines because when you do this work, which is basically like time traveling, you can change what's happening now because it's all happening at the same time anyways.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, exactly. It also makes sense why there's so many cultures that say if you do trauma release work, you heal it for 7 generations past and 7
Oh
generations
my
into
God, I
the
love
future.
that. I just got chills.
7 again.
Oh my God,
And
yes.
right?
Yeah.
Because it's not, they're not like this, they're like this. They're all stacked on top of each other.
Right.
And you can, in a sense, we're not physically able to move through them, but the energies are moving through them. So whatever we're doing here has impact into the past and the future.
It's amazing. It's incredible.
This is a fun little bridge to something we talked a tiny bit about before we started recording. It was like we did our session like I think something like 5 or 6 weeks ago, maybe a bit more. And it was one of the things that came up was like in the astrology chart was like the core wound was I think something around the core wounding was the mother wound, and that I'm here. That there's something of a karmic healing that's a big part.
It was
Like
Chiron. You have Chiron in Cancer, just to give people perspective.
Right. From your perspective, can you elaborate a little bit more on what that means before we dive further?
Yes. Chiron in the astrology chart is an asteroid or a planetoid. Can't remember the exact definition of it through astronomy, but it's not fully a planet. But it was discovered around in the 70s. And whenever a planet is discovered, the name that it's given by the astronomers, not the astrologers, the astronomers, the astrologers take and go, ooh, let's look at the mythological story of that, because that's what that planet means. Like, so subconsciously, these astronomers are naming planets, and the astrologers are like, great, thank you. Now that's what it means. They gave it the name Chiron. So who is Chiron in mythology? Chiron was a centaur. He was half horse, half human. And usually the centaurs were the unruly centaurs, like they were troublemakers. But Chiron was different. And he became a healer. And he was like the healer to all the other, the kids of the gods, you know, the demigods and stuff. So the story is that one day he's teaching Hercules how to shoot the arrows, and they're dipping the arrows in the Hydra's blood, which is poisonous. And Hercules accidentally pricks Chiron in his ankle. And that's what we call it the Achilles heel. Like that's the weak spot. Right. So he
That's in
accidentally
story.
pricks him with the Hydra's blood. But Chiron was immortal. So he's going to have to forever live with the pain. He's not going to die. He's just going to forever have to live with the pain. So then there's another god that is being punished by Zeus or Jupiter, who is Prometheus. Prometheus was the god that gave fire to the humans. So he's being punished. He's tied to a rock, and an eagle swoops down and eats his liver every day. And then overnight, the liver grows back. And this just goes on and on and on. All these stories have symbolism, by the way. It's like interpreting dreams. Okay, like when you interpret mythology, you're like interpreting dreams, and you can go deeper and deeper into the meaning of every little tiny detail of the story. Down to the eagle, down to what does the liver mean, things like that. So anyways, Chiron sacrifices, he gives up his immortality. He trades places with Prometheus. And then Chiron is able to actually die and not live in constant pain forever. And Prometheus is saved. So it's a sacrifice. So it's kind of like you can then compare it to the story of like Jesus, who sacrificed himself for the people. It's the same. It's the same theme. So Chiron sacrificed himself for others, and so or sacrificed himself for someone else. In the chart, Chiron is known as the wounded healer because of that story. He's the wounded healer. And in our chart personally, what sign he's in and what house he's in, he represents our core wound. And so you have Chiron in Cancer, which is the sign of the moon, the mother, the feminine, the nurturing aspect of life. So that's to catch everybody up with what you're about to share, which I'm really curious about.
Yeah. Okay. So, apart from doing this podcast, I am a filmmaker, mostly documentary filmmaker, and I'm not going to spoil too many details. Going to be a bit careful here, but it's not all going to be out soon. But I am working on a project that has to do with regression therapy and reincarnation therapy. And I also received a session from a therapist since we last spoke, where something came up of a past life where how do I say this? I tried to show off for my mother in that life, and something terrible happened to other people. And so there was this wound with the mother of like being, how do I say, maybe it has to do with like wanting to be close, but also like feeling guilty about things, and like not like there's like how do I say, like a lot of tension on that relationship, which I sometimes experience in this life. And then you expressed so that's one thing. And then another thing is like this is some of stuff so personal I don't want to share it, so I'm like a bit careful with shooting my words, but I learned through that therapy session that part of the job I have to do in this life is to karmically heal what happened in that life. And it has to do also with education. And you mentioned, I think this was in the human design, you mentioned I am maybe at some point in my life supposed to start like an educational project or a school or something like that. So it felt like those things felt like, oh, nice ideas. But then when I had this session and I relived in that therapy session some of the stuff that happened, decades ago in a previous life, it felt like they perfectly overlap, and a lot more stuff starts to make sense.
I love that. And that's a really good example of how this works. Like you can take it, first off, you have to take it at the intellectual level. Like that's how it comes in. You know, you're
Yeah.
you're describing concepts, you're describing archetypes, you're describing, stories, and then it slowly starts to take on kind of like this life of its own. And then the embodiment of that is like the next thing that you probably experience. And then the synchronicities start to show up in life. So I
Yeah.
would call that a major, like, a powerful synchronicity, and something that needed. It's like, also think about the fact that we did the reading first, and then you did that session, and it could have been the other way around, like with the
Yeah. Yeah.
timing. Like,
Yeah.
you could have ended up doing that session first, but no, you didn't. You ended up doing it after you discovered this information. So it was like could have been a seed was planted that you were going to uncover in that session. And that's what we mean by like the synchronicities, and how like once you start to be in alignment, these things start to happen, and it seems like they're happening out of nowhere, but they're really not.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like they're all just expressions of a deeper undercurrent, like a flow of like an energy that if we're out of alignment, we're not in that current that we're supposed to be in, where we're on a frequency where these other things are sort of, we're in a certain frequency, and everything that vibrates at that frequency that is supposed to help us on our way, in a sense, will come into our life if we're in that frequency. If we're out of alignment, we're not experiencing these things, so we don't see them, and they're not like they don't, or things happen but they don't make sense as much.
Yeah. I would agree with that.
You talked a little bit earlier about you said like in my, what is it, 8th house or 10th house, what are these houses?
Yeah.
Can you elaborate a bit on that?
So the houses are like the areas of life where things happen. So there's 12 houses. So we have 12 signs, 12 houses. Each house has like a theme and represents something. And so they also correlate with the 12 signs. So house 1 would be the first sign, Aries. House 2 would be Taurus. House 3 would be Gemini. And so you apply that to the meaning of the house. So Aries is all about the self and identity. So the first house is about self and identity. So if you have any planets in the first house, they affect your identity. Okay, so
Right.
then you would go to the second house, which is the house of money, self-worth, self-esteem. It's Taurus energy. So Taurus is like stability, security. So if you have any planets in the second house, they affect that stability, security, your sense of self-worth, and so on and so forth. And you can go all the way around the wheel and discover what each of these means. But essentially, they're connected to the astrological signs and what the signs represent. And they're telling you this is the area of life. And this is the type of the space where you will be affected when planets are transiting this space. And also if you have planets there.
Right. Cool. Yeah. And so they don't change, but the movement of the planets and whatever we call what Chiron is, that changes throughout your life. And the speed of them is different as well, because the speed of the planets throughout the galaxy is different, right? So one of the things that we did in the reading was like we're like, okay, let's see what will happen when I think one of the things like when will the sun cross into the next sign, for example, or something like that, right? So you can sort of scroll forward throughout your life in a sense to see like, okay, when is it likely that a major shift is going to happen in that period? So not maybe exactly on that date, but like around those 2 years or something like that.
Yeah. So all the planets travel at different timing, and depending on how close to the sun or how far from the sun they are. That's what we're in relation to the sun. The sun
Right.
moves 1 degree per day. And so every 30 days, because each sign has 30 degrees, every 30 days, the sun will go into the next sign. And then 30 days later, it'll go into, that's what we call the astrological seasons, basically.
Yeah.
And then there's other charts that you can look at, for example, the progressions, or even something else called solar arcs, which we didn't really talk about, but it's around the same sort of meaning of chart, and look at the evolution. And in that chart, they move a lot slower because the timing, the way that chart is calculated is different, but it does depend on the original like flow and timing of speed of that specific planet. So yes, you can watch the planets kind of like travel around your natal chart sits still in the center. But the planet, so when you're born, it's like you take a snapshot of that moment that you were born. That's where the planets were. And wherever you were on the planet will determine the houses, essentially. And so that one sits still and it stays like that for your whole life. But then the planets that are transiting, that they keep going. The planets don't stop moving just because you were born, right? They
Yeah.
keep going, right? And so that's the transits. That's what we call the transiting planets. They're like passing through the houses of your own chart. And then sometimes they'll hit upon something in your chart that you had right there when you were born. And then you'll feel that effect. You'll feel the activation of that energy and so on and so forth.
Yeah. One thing comes to mind that I've thought about a couple of times over the last months. Like, let's zoom out a bit. And do we, bless you, do you believe that, let's say, we are influenced by the planets, or are our lives and the planets both an expression of something deep underlying deeper, and is looking at the planets just a way of being able to read the energy that is actually affecting us?
So will you repeat that again, the first part of it?
Yes. So is it the planets that, and the sun and the moon, that are influencing our lives in a sense? Or is it something deeper, that both what is happening in our lives and the planets are an expression of?
I think it's a little bit of both.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's both happening at the same time. You have the planets, because when you incarnate. So it's about incarnation. I think that's you. It's like this is a really good concept. So in human design, there's something called the neutrinos, and this is a physics thing. I think.
Yeah.
Okay, so neutrinos essentially are like these like little tiny particles that are like smaller than particles, but they come and they affect, like they touch us. And so in that way, that's how human design says it works. Like human design says that the planets, the neutrinos of the planets came and, kind of glazed you or in a way, when you incarnated.
Right.
So you can take that concept, be like, okay, some kind of energetic frequency comes off something, a planet, a star, and then when it reaches us, it affects us in a certain way. We feel that. We feel the effect of that, right? So you could say that's kind of how transits work. Like the neutrinos are like hitting, at this time, they're hitting like this. On this day today, they're hitting like this. So that's how they're affecting us from the outside in. But then when we incarnate, like we are spirit that descends into matter, we become matter. So it's like we also at the same time are, I want to say engraved in a way, but
Yeah.
we're engraved with the frequency of that exact moment that we were born. And then it's like, whoop, we become the embodiment of that. So we are that, and we are being affected afterwards. So that's why I feel like it's both.
Right. Okay. Yes. So it's but that's coming from the planets to us in a sense. But
Oh, okay.
I've so the I want to go a little deeper still. It's like, is it the planets then that is doing this through this way of the neutrinos hitting our bodies, or is it something? Let's call it the great mystery, something that we cannot really see, perhaps, but it's like an energetic layer that is influencing us and influencing the planets. So it's more like the planets are the clock, and we can tell by the clock what's going to happen or what time it is, but the clock isn't actually affecting us. It's time that's affecting us. Maybe this is a bad example because time doesn't exist, but I think you know what I mean.
Yeah. This is like a tough question to answer, but it keeps bringing me back to, for example, I just had something in my mind when you were saying that as an example. Okay, so the way that I would approach it is that we are here on Earth. So we have the perspective from Earth. And on Earth, the solar system that we're living in is literally, we call it the solar system. And actually, this is interesting, but I recently, I started taking a different astrology school. It's called Step Astrology with Christopher Witecki, which I actually highly recommend if anyone's interested. He's based off of California. But anyways, he said something that kind of blew my mind, and I want to bring it here because I think it'll fit. So he said that it takes an entire solar system to support a soul. Like to actually support a soul on a planet, for example, our planet. So you have to have an entire solar system. And then that solar system holds the container for us here on Earth. So other solar systems around the universe have different containers for the souls born on those planets. So if you take it from that perspective, it's like we're in this little container. So we have to know that, the planets in our solar system are the ones that are going to affect our life here on Earth because we're part of this solar system. Like in other solar systems, maybe they don't have a Pluto. Maybe they have something else. You know what I mean?
Yeah, of course.
So you know what I'm saying? So right?
Everywhere.
So that's how I see it. That's how I see it, that like, no, it actually really does depend on the planet. But at the same time, life itself is in everything and everyone. So it's a part of it, everything and everyone. And that's I guess the major underlying thing behind it all is like life force itself. Yeah. But because we're in this specific solar system and planet, we are like, this is the one we live in. This is what these are the boundary. These are the sort of maybe the law, I don't know, of our solar system. So that's how I think I'm taking it anyways. I don't know if that made sense.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, I think that sense of like capital L life, like this sort of, I once had I'm not too big on plant medicine anymore, but I've experienced an ayahuasca ceremony once, and I was shown this, like a lot of different scenes of multiple people. So it'd be like partners or like a mother with a child, different kind of things. Or someone sitting at a table in a house. And I would see it as clear as I see it now. And at the same time, everything had this sort of vibrant, little bit color, white-ish energy flowing through it. And as for example, the child said something that lit up the mother, like the mother would literally lit up and it would be like energy flowing through them. So it to me, it looked like I was shown like the life force that is within everything in a sense. It was really interesting. So like, it makes sense to me that is something that, it's that's the thing that actually maybe eventually is the main underlying force, influence and everything, but it doesn't mean that everything else doesn't influence each other as well. Just as we if I push you, you will have to step aside in a sense, you know, like so those things all have an effect as well. Yeah. Are there, you just touched on your teacher, Christopher?
Christopher Witecki.
Yeah. What is the thing that, after all this experience that you already have, like what is something that he ignites in you that's new?
Oh, that's a good question. So he teaches a system that he's like the protector of it. He says he channeled it. So a lot of these systems are kind of channeled, but he channeled it, and it has to do with looking at the specific degrees in the astrology. But the numbers tell us the story of manifestation, basically. So you can recognize the steps that it takes to manifest something, to actually bring joy or whatever it is that you want. And so that is something that, like I've studied the planets, I've studied the signs, I've studied the house, I've studied all this stuff, right? And even the degrees, right? Because there's a general sense when you study the degrees of astrology where you talk about this thing called the decans, right? And so you have, each sign is divided into 3 decans. You have the first decan, the second decan, the third decan, and it relates to like degrees from 0 to 9 is the first decan. Degrees 10 to 19 is the second decan, and 20 to 29 is the third decan. And those three decans have like a different frequency. Like, so 0 to 9 is like a baby energy, like it's young, and then in the middle, it's like more of an adult. And then in the third decan, it's more of wise energy. So depending on if your sun was at 0 degrees, it would be very different than if it was at like 29 degrees.
Yeah.
So you take the energy of the degree, and then, which is basically the numerology and the progression, like 0 is younger than 29. You know what I mean? And so you attach meaning to the actual numbers. But that's as far as I feel like a lot of astrology goes. Christopher Witecki is taking these numbers and giving them like there's a whole nother perspective, and it's backed by the secret formula of manifestation lives in these numbers, in these degrees. So it gets kind of complex, but it's also simple, but it's like a whole new world that I feel like is going to complement everything that I already do.
Wow. That must be exciting.
Yeah, it is exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How we touched, as I'm a manifester, we touched on manifestation. What are you excited to manifest over the next few years?
I up to this point, I feel like this year specifically, or more than ever, I feel more in alignment with myself as a mental projector, with myself as just in general, in alignment. I feel much more aligned. I'm receiving the right kind of invitations, and it feels good. So in the next few years, I'm excited to just see this continue to move forward. Because it's been a long time, right? Like my entire life, basically, to like seeing like when is it going to feel like I'm fully in alignment? And I feel like this year feels like that to me. So anything moving forward is like, I'm so excited to see what's going to come next, what's going to unfold next. So I don't necessarily have a specific thing. I mean, I'm really excited about my book.
Yeah.
I'm really excited about, other opportunities that will show up. The funny thing is about being a projector is you have to wait for the invitation. So I guess I would say I'm really excited about the invitations that this right alignment for me will bring in the next few years, to collaborate with people, to, all of that.
That's cool. I love that. Is there anything where, when it comes to like, I feel like working with these tools is like a journey that will continue a lifetime or maybe many lifetimes. For you personally, is there anything that you've uncovered that you still feel like that's something that you want to like transform or work on, or excited about?
I mean, yeah, it's ongoing. Like, I'm not perfect by any means. I just have the awareness of it, I think, and I can see where the issues are, like I can see where my shadows live, and I can see when I'm in those spaces. And it just gives me the opportunity. It's like constant opportunities to like, do I want to choose to actually go deep and heal this today? Do I want to, in a ways, it's a little bit of like, the more aware you become, like the more awake you are, you can't go back to sleep. And so you are constantly being shown like these things that just keep coming up. So it almost seems like overwhelming sometimes. And I think you have to practice a lot of self-care as you're discovering these new things about yourself. Because you can get to a point where you're like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. I don't know how I'm going to change. I don't know how I'm going to change. I don't know. So you can feel really far away from like this, final goal, I guess you could say, you were trying to get to it, just like to fully heal. So the beauty of it that has helped me is the recognition that it's the journey, right? It's not about when you get to the specific result. It's ongoing. And when you relax into that, then life just becomes this flow. And you can just kind of dance through things as they come, and there's going to be ebbs and flows. And if you know that, then you can relax into it. So I would say personally, lately, I have been focusing a little bit more on the Venus sequence than I have before in the past. And it's been bringing up a lot of things. And also in the writing of the book, I'm like seeing all these like different, like, there's patterns showing up and things like that. But it's exciting to me. Like I don't ever look at, like spiritual growth as, I don't reject it anymore. I open myself up to like receive the information, to clear it if I need to clear it, and to take my time with it if I need to take my time with it. And that perspective has made all the difference, because otherwise I would just be overwhelmed with all the work that supposedly needs to be done,
Yeah, it hit a note when you said like what we're here to do is to heal, but like we're also here to have fun, right? And just
Right.
experiment and play
Yeah,
and like
exactly. You're supposed
yeah.
to play more than heal. Like the healing eventually, like at first it feels heavy, because at first you got to take a big jump to get there.
Yeah, you go from like what's the thing is like unaware, incompetent to aware but incompetent. That's the most painful phase, right? Because that's where and it's in a sense this is part of that where you're like, oh, I'm supposed to be there, and I'm like, there's all these things I have to work on, and you're like, oh shit.
Yeah, right.
And then at some point you become like aware and competent, and you probably go back and forth between competent and incompetent for most of your life.
Well, eventually, yeah. I think eventually you like you just deal with it as it comes.
Yeah, that resonates. Like it feels like I think it's also like I wouldn't call it a sickness necessarily, but I do see it a lot happening where people are like addicted to like retreats and healing
Oh
and all
yeah,
kinds of
there's
stuff.
that
Like,
too.
you're
Yeah.
constantly searching for healing more and digging up more trauma, where it's like, look, I think by living your life, the things that you need to experience will show themselves. And stuff like this are great tools to make sure that you are not stuck for 10 years, but maybe have early awareness to start moving and shifting. But, and it's, yeah, it like what you've taught me in that session with you, and then also like now in the last 1.5 hours, like there are amazing ways to learn more about ourselves and step more into, let's say, our own potential and who we truly are. But let's not get too stuck in then wanting to live exactly to that blueprint 100% of the time.
Yes.
Yeah.
100% agree with that. Yes. I think eventually you start to realize, okay, now that I dove fully into this, I'm going to relax.
Yeah, exactly.
Give it
Yeah.
some
That's what it is,
space.
right?
Yeah.
It's like I also feel like with a lot of like these are 3 beautiful tools, and there's many more other things like we touched on a little bit, like soul retrieval or whatever, where it's like you could dedicate your whole life to one of them, but you can also like learn enough about each of them to have an extra layer of awareness, and then just relax, live your life. And then when something pops up, you use the tools accordingly,
I
right?
love this. Yeah, I love it. It's kind of like what I do now.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just help
Yeah,
people
that's
get on that path, and they'd be like, good luck. I'm just kidding.
yeah.
No, but eventually it becomes that. It's like it comes and goes. Like sometimes I'm
Yeah.
like doing amazing, and then sometimes I'm like, oh nope, we're dealing with something right now. But I don't put it off anymore. That's the difference.
Yeah.
It's like, no, I know the value of actually facing things head on.
Yeah,
You won't have
exactly.
to
Like
deal with it later. You fix it now.
right? I mean, yeah. Like if you don't listen to the small signs, the big signs will come, and they're more painful. So
Yeah.
better listen to the small signs. Yeah.
Yeah.
We probably both have lots of experience of lots of examples around our lives where
Yeah.
it's like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, Jay, thanks so much for your time in this live conversation. And there's so many more things we could go into, but I also want to respect your time and just have it somewhat condensed. I feel like one last thing to maybe ask is like, if you could, I don't know, like if you could leave the listener with one message or encode one little string of something into their soul, into their DNA, what would that be?
So I always go to my life's work, which is the 35th gene key, which goes from the shadow of hunger to the gift of adventure, to the city of boundlessness. That's my life's work, it's basic boundlessness. And I always love this concept of adventure. And it's like, let life be an adventure and have fun with the things that show up. Even the scary, like dramatic, dark things that come up. Like, how can you continue to be on that like hero's journey and let life be an adventure and have fun? Don't forget that, because life there can be miracles. There can be miracles. And I truly believe that. I feel like my life has been lately more than anything, like one miracle after another. And it's when I allow myself to just relax and not try to force things. So that would be what I would want to leave the listeners with.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thanks so much again for all the time and the wisdom and your unique energy and frequency that you're bringing. And to everyone listening, tuning in, watching on YouTube, thanks so much for being a part of this again. And I hope you got so much out of this. You got inspired to dive into astrology, the gene keys, human design. I will definitely link below all the contact and stuff to the work that Jai is doing, so you can reach out to her if that's what you like. And I hope to see you again next week.
Thank you so much. This was great. Thank you.